Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Enjoy the fanfic. And let's begin. What if Naruto and Sensei love with each other? Naruto x Tsunade Part 4. It has been a few days since the funeral service to honor the fallen of Konoha. The council was once again in session, but with a guest, that being Jiraiya the Gama Sanin. Jiraiya, spoke Homura, you have been called before this council to be appointed as the Godime Hokage, spoke the elder. Jiraiya dismissed him with a wave. I don't think I would be the best fit for the job. Kaharu rose an eyebrow at this. Oh, then who would you suggest for the position? Jiraiya gained a serious look. I think Tsunade would be the best choice, commented the white-haired sage. She has not been seen near the village in years. Why would she be the best choice for the position? Questioned Danzo. It's simple. We need her medical experience, and she is the only one who can get our medical program to where it once was. Plus, when pushed she can be so stubborn that she won't give ground to anyone, stated Jiraiya. The council thought about the points that Jiraiya put forward. It was true that Tsunade fought tooth and nail when she believed she was right. In a political setting she wouldn't cow to mere threats, demanding action from those that threaten her. And we just saw a giant slug get summoned nearby, so it shouldn't take that long to locate her. The elders looked to one another and nodded. Okay Jiraiya, we agree to her appointment. However, you will need to go and convince her to return. Jiraiya nodded in agreement to this. That's fine, but got the council's attention. I would like to take Naruto Uzumaki with me, he stated. Oh, and why would you want to take the boy with you? Asked Danzo. He was curious as to why Jiraiya needed one of their biggest ETS when it came to the search and rescue operations. After all, the boy is now helping as a nurse's aide in many of the field hospitals throughout the village. Seeing an up-and-coming medic like him may help convince Tsunade to return. She was an excellent teacher, and seeing a budding student may break through to her. Once again, the council thought over this. Very well Jiraiya, we will allow you to take the boy. But do not dally, as he is still an threat to our recovery. Jiraiya nodded before shining out of the room. As soon as he was gone, the doors to the council room were opened rather harshly. What was surprising was the person who walked through the double doors. Tsunade! Cried Homura and Kaharu. What are you doing here? They asked in near-perfect unison. I have come to find out why the medical program I worked so hard to create has fallen in quality, she said sternly. Here many of those seated on the council began to stutter out excuses. Some that she was met with were, we need to shift funding around after the Kyuubi attack, or, many of our inspiring shinobi had no interest in the field, so part of their budget was allocated elsewhere, or her personal favorite, there wasn't someone who wanted to fill your shoes. With each given excuse, Tsunade's ire began to grow until she snapped. That does it, she shouted, silencing the council. You're in need of a new Hokage after Sarutobi Sensei's death, right? Well, make me the new Hokage. Sensei did not stand his ground on many issues from what I understand. Well, it's time that this village reach the great heights it was known for. She declared adamantly. Tsunade had learned of the decline through Shizune's academic tutelage of Naruto. Hearing of the events her sensei allowed to happen since he retook office made her rather upset. In his previous term as Hokage he wasn't as soft on issues. She should know. He turned down her proposal for a medic to be in each squad during the Second Great Shinobi War. On top of that, she has a personal reason to stay in Konoha, and if she could help him by becoming Hokage, well. The council was elated. Tsunade had returned to become the Godime Hokage, so they had no need for Jiraiya to go and look for the woman. At that realization, the council's mood soured, as Jiraiya was probably already gone. Naruto was seated at Ichiraku Ramen. Tsunade had told him that she had something important to do, and that she'll meet up with him later. That was fine for him, as he could use the alone time to really come to grip with his feelings on the Sandaime after the funeral. He came to accept that he may be angry with what the Sandaime allowed to happen to him, but he will be thankful for what the old man did do for him. He was feeling a lot better through with Tsunade's advice and encouragement, as it made him feel a lot better and get through the hard time of seeing all the wounded as he helped out at the field hospitals. That was something he was amazed during his time at the field hospitals. Recently the medical staff had become more neutral to him as he demonstrated what Su-chan was teaching. He was really happy and felt that he was making her proud. His happy time was interrupted when this really tall, white-haired man sat down next to him. He gave the man a suspicious look as he ate his ramen slower to be able to react if this guy would become hostile. Soon Ayami walked out from the back carrying another bowl of miso ramen. Here you go, Naruto-kun. But this will have to be your last bowl. Don't want you getting in trouble now, you hear, chastised Ayami. That got Naruto's attention. Ayami ne-chan. You can't do that. Ayami shrugged. I really don't want to get you in trouble or be in trouble for allowing you to indulge. Naruto hung his head. Ever since Tsunade started managing his diet, he has not been allowed to have as much ramen. Don't get him wrong, he has been seeing a lot of results, but he still has cravings for his favorite food. Ayami watched as Naruto had waterfall tears slide down his cheeks while he indulged in his last 2 bowls of ramen. She then looked to his left and saw a white-haired man. Recognizing him, she immediately bowed and said, Jiraiya-sama. You grace us with your presence. The name caught Naruto's attention. Jiraiya the Gamma Sanin, one of Su-chan's teammates. Wait. Isn't he the super pervert? Naruto shouted in his mind as he remembered Shizune Sensei's lessons on the Sanin. Jiraiya was about to give one of his legendary introductions before he was shouted at by the blonde next to him. Hey you pervert. Don't you dare hit on Ayami ne-chan. Naruto shouted as he pointed at the taller man. Jiraiya froze in place. Hey you little gaki. Who are you calling a pervert? I'll have you know I'm a super pervert. He shouted to the heavens. As he was shouting, he failed to see the fist Naruto sent his way. As the strike connected, Jiraiya was launched 10 feet down the street. Naruto grumbled under his breath about perverts as he went back to his ramen. In the meanwhile, Ayami was speechless. Naruto-kun, did you learn that from Su-chan? Naruto nodded enthusiastically. Yep. That was one of the many things she taught me. He stated proudly. After Naruto paid the bill and was leaving the stand, he found Jiraiya standing in front of him. That was a rather impressive hit, Gaki. Well, I have a great teacher, retorted Naruto. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. Didn't think Kakashi knew how to teach heavy striking, thought the Gamma Sanin. So what do you want? You are obviously waiting for me, stated Naruto. Jiraiya got a serious look. I have been ignored a mission by the council and I am taking you with me. That got Naruto's attention. He hasn't been on a mission since the start of the Chunin exams. Naruto raises an eyebrow towards the Gamma Sanin. So what's the mission? He asks calmly. Jiraiya was taken aback by the boy's attitude. From what he knew of the boy, he was loud, brash and was willing to do anything as long as it's exciting. This boy in front of him seemed to have some demeanor as a shinobi. We will be going after a special VIP. This is a council-decided mission, so get packed and meet me at the gate and pack for a month-long trip, he ordered as he shunshined away. Naruto let out a sigh and made his way back to the Senju compound to let Tsunade and Shizune know he had a mission. He also had to make his way toward his apartment as he only has some of his things with the older women. Naruto ran into Tsunade sitting in the kitchen drinking some green tea. Shizune appeared to be out and he could hear Taunton rushing over to greet him. Hey Su-chan, he called out. Tsunade looked towards the energetic blonde who just picked up Taunton. Hello Naruto. Anything interesting happen? She asked the younger blonde. Naruto moved over toward her as he began to pet the piglet. Well, I got ignored a mission to locate some kind of VIP from the council alongside the pervert Sanin and he said it would take a month, explained the younger blonde. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. She didn't hear about this mission from the council when she was made the Godime Hokage. I should see what this mission is. After all, I can't have my shinobi acting outside of my purview. Plus I need to make sure my little Naru is safe, thought the busty blonde. Well, that's interesting, Naruto. I guess that means that we will have to put your elemental ninjutsu training on hold until you get back. At that, Naruto froze. What? Well, I can't teach you if you are not here, she replied to his stunned face. Naruto hung his head in response. Are you sure? Asked the younger blonde. Tsunade cupped her chin in thought. Well, there may be a way, but let me work out the details before I commit to it, okay? Naruto nodded at her word. Also, I have some news of my own. Here she gave a sly smile, gaining the younger blonde's attention. I've been named the Godime Hokage, she told him with a large smile. Naruto looked at her with shock and awe, which soon shifted to an adorable pout. No fair. I should have been named the Godime, pouted Naruto. Tsunade rubbed his head affectionately. Not yet, Naru-chan, but you'll get there, she told him. Naruto smiled up at her. Well then, I guess you'll have to keep the hat warm for me, Su-chan. Tsunade smiled at him. But wait, panicked Naruto. If I'm out on this mission, I won't be here to watch you take the hat. He stated as he clapped his cheeks with his hand, accidentally dropping tauntaun in his surprise. Tsunade poked him in the forehead softly. Don't worry about that. When the time comes, I can have Katsuyu reverse summon you so you won't miss a thing, she explained. Naruto sighed in relief. Her expression now became semi-serious. Now you said that you needed to pack for your mission, right? Naruto nodded in affirmation. Oink! Came the cry from the upset piglet. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Sorry, tauntaun. Tsunade stood from the table and ushered him to follow her. They made it to the main office of the compound. Sitting on the desk were 2 scrolls and a carry case meant for his thigh. There was also a large utility pouch, like the ones used by medical corps members during times of conflict. I figured I would get you something to celebrate how well you did during the exam. The 2 scrolls are storage scrolls. The red one is empty so you can pack whatever you want, while the blue one is a complete medical scroll complete with everything a fully fledged medic nin would ever need. The pouch carries a full field response kit as well as a full array of kunai and shuriken, she told him. Naruto hugged Tsunade by the waist. Thank you, Su-chan. Tsunade returned the hug before she reminded him once more. So are you ready to begin packing? Naruto eager to try out his new storage scroll. Naruto attached the scroll holster to his right thigh and the utility pouch to his belt alongside his smaller one as they went to pack what Naruto had at the Senju compound. It wasn't a lot and they needed to get more to ensure he was properly packed. I think I need to get back to my apartment to get the rest, Naruto stated as they stored the last of what he had at the Senju compound. Tsunade agreed with him, as what he has would only be good for a week-long mission at best. Before they left for his apartment, Tsunade grabbed another scroll that Naruto didn't notice. As they made their way through the village, their presence went unnoticed as people were more focused on removing the debris to pay attention to the world around them. When they finally made it to Naruto's apartment, part of the building seemed to be damaged from the invasion. "Aw man, my apartment," whined the younger blonde. Tsunade put a comforting hand on his shoulder. Come on. Let's see how bad it is. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks, said the slug Sanin. Naruto nodded hesitantly and the two made their way inside. When they entered Naruto's living room, the cracked dry wall now had large chunks missing, allowing them to see the insulation and support beams. The floors were cracked and some pieces were even missing. Many of the appliances seemed to be broken while the furniture was selectively intact. Naruto was heartbroken at the destruction of his home. It wasn't much, but it was his. Once again, Tsunade put a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder. Why don't we take stock of what survived? Gather the things that made here in the living room, okay? Naruto nodded and began to gather what he could. Tsunade following suit. Luckily his stash of shinobi tools and the contents of his closet survived. It appeared his dishes did not. The food within his refrigerator had spoiled due to the appliance being offline and the products not being fresh when he got them. His bed frame seemed to survive but not the mattress. The two blondes gathered everything in the living room as Tsunade instructed, taking the time to pack the rest of what Naruto needed for his mission. Once Naruto was fully packed, Tsunade brought out the scroll she had brought with her. She took a knee and unfurled it, showing several blank storage seals. Naruto looked at her confused. "Su-chan, what are you doing with that scroll?" Tsunade looked at Naruto with a happy smile. "Well, Naru-chan, it's to move you out." Now Naruto was really confused and a little scared. "You are moving into the Senju compound with me and Shizune. You said we would stick together, right? You can't do that if you live so far away." Naruto looked at her with shock. He was moving in with her and Shizune. Is this a dream? Wondered the younger blonde. Oblivious to Naruto's thoughts, Tsunade continued. "You'll have your own room and it will be close to mine and Shizune's, so you will not need to feel alone again." Naruto began to tear up. He was not going to be alone anymore. Not just outside of his apartment, but now he was going to be living with people who actually cared for him. At his fastest speed, Naruto ran into Tsunade, knocking the two to the floor as he hugged her as tightly as he could. Tsunade was taken by surprise from Naruto's burst of speed, so she did not brace herself. As she was tackled to the ground, she felt Naruto's tears flow down her cheek. Tsunade returned the hug as she allowed him let loose his tears. She softly said into his ear, "Don't worry, Naruto, I'm not going anywhere." After Naruto calmed down, they finished packing the rest of his things. As they made their way out of his apartment, Tsunade spoke, "When you get back from your mission, I'll show you which room is yours. I'll get everything in here put away for you. For now, why don't you go report into the pervert that you are ready?" Naruto scratched his cheek nervously. He didn't tell me which gate to report to. Ahehe. Tsunade pinched the bridge of her nose at her former teammate's blatant oversight. She shook her head to brush off her irritation. She looked towards Naruto as they walked. "So if you don't know which gate to meet him at, what should you do?" Naruto thought about it for a bit. With a snap of his fingers, the answer came to him. "I should send a Kage Bunshin to each gate so they can tell me," he spouted enthusiastically. Tsunade nodded her head in approval. Needing no other prompting, Naruto made 3 bunchins and sent one to each gate. They all understood they were to dispel if they saw the perverts, so he knew where to go. Having nothing better to do until his bunchins popped, Naruto continued to walk with Tsunade. It wouldn't be long before his bunshin at the southern gate would pop, alerting each Naruto that the pervert had been located. "Hey Su-chan, my bunchins found him at the south gate, so I'll head over there." Tsunade nodded at his words. "All right. Be careful and remember, if you aren't back by the inauguration ceremony, I'll have Katsuyu reverse summon you back so you won't miss it. Once the ceremony is done, she can take you right back." Naruto nodded in understanding before giving Tsunade a hug, which she happily returned, and setting off for the south gate. He didn't get far before Tsunade called back for him. "Naruto. Wait." Naruto stopped in his tracks and looked back to Tsunade. She waved him back but met him halfway. "What's up, Su-chan? I have something for you." She pulled out a roll of ryo from the inside of her Hiyori. "I normally keep a roll on me, so if I stop at a casino, I have a buy-in. This roll I'm giving you. I suspect you haven't had a mission in a while and could use some spending money," she told him as she handed him the roll. Naruto was surprised. "Wow. Thanks, Su-chan." He cheered as he placed the roll in his toad wallet. "Gamma-chan. Now if you are going to buy something, make sure it is something you want. And never ever let anyone tell you that you should do something for them just because you have money," she told him seriously. Naruto nodded before he was once more sent on his way. Jiraiya was waiting impatiently for Naruto to show up. He was tapping his finger on his biceps as his arms were crossed. A scowl marred his features, that was until he heard someone running up to him. He turned his head toward the noise and saw Naruto running up to him. "You're late, Gaki." Naruto scowled at Jiraiya. "You didn't tell me where to meet you." Naruto shot back. Jiraiya didn't look apologetic in the slightest. "Well, let's get going. We need to find our VIP as soon as possible," he said as he walked through the gate. Naruto walked after him, not exactly enthusiastic about this if this is how they are starting out. Tsunade made her way back to the Senju compound, intent on setting up Naruto's room. As she arrived, she found the elders at the gate waiting for her. She stopped to see what they wanted. "Hello, Tsunade," greeted Homura. "We just came by to let you know that the inauguration ceremony to announce your selection as Godime will be in 2 days." Tsunade nodded in understanding. "Thank you for letting me know. Of course, if you wish to have anyone on the tower roof with you, please file that with your Anbu guard who will meet you tomorrow. Also have your I-stand prepared for the position as well, as it is best that this is submitted before you are granted the position." Once more Tsunade nodded in understanding. "Who is the Anbu that will arrive to present themselves to me?" "The one who shall arrive as Gazaru," replied Danzo. Once more Tsunade nodded. "Thank you for the notice," she told the elders. With that they left and went about doing their own things. Sakura was walking home from her time in Easting in cleaning up the village. Though she had taken several detours. "Man, I just can't seem to get a lead on her," whined the Pinkett. Sakura was hoping to find the red-headed angel. She had begun to idolize the woman after she saved her from that Oto shinobi back in the arena. She had grown up hearing the stories of many legendary shinobi, but not so much when it came to kunoichi. Sure, there were some great ones, like Tsunade Senju, but she had never seen a kunoichi like her in person. Now, however, she got to witness someone as powerful as one of the few legendary kunoichi. This showed her what she could be if she trained seriously. To that end, she was looking for the red-headed angel in the hopes she would train her, or at least provide her some methods to train so she could be as strong as her. As she was looking around, she saw Lee's female teammate. She didn't remember the girl's name, but she could at least be nice and ask how she is doing. "Hey," Sakura called out, getting the bun-haired girl's attention. "You're Lee's teammate, right?" The bun-haired girl nodded in affirmation. "Yeah, the name's Tenten," she said as she stuck her hand out, which Sakura accepted. "You're the girl Lee tried to flirt with before the exams, right?" Sakura let out a heavy sigh as she hung her head. She really didn't want to be reminded of that embering moment in her young life. "Please, don't remind me of that." Tenten waved her hand in front of her face. "Sorry about that. Lee can get excited when he becomes P8. I know that it can come off as being overbearing." Sakura could agree to that. "So what are you doing out here?" asked Tenten. "I'm looking for the red-headed angel," replied the Pinkett. Tenten raised an eyebrow at that. "Oh, why are you looking for her?" "I want her to train me," replied Sakura enthusiastically. Tenten clapped her hands over Sakura's. "You too?" she asked starry-eyed. "Yeah, I was hoping she could train me to be strong. After all, it's not every day you get to see a strong kunoichi." Tenten nodded her head vigorously. "I know what you mean. She hit as hard as Tsunade-sama. I was hoping to find her too. I want to be strong just like her." "Well, why don't we search for her together?" asked Sakura. Tenten jumped into the air doing a little cheer. "That sounds like a good idea." Unknown to the two young kunoichi, their conversation had drawn the attention of one of the two female jonin of Konoha, Kurenai Yuhi. Kurenai was elated at first to hear the two kunoichi were looking to improve, however she began to get a little angry when they brought up that they didn't see a strong kunoichi. She was the only female jonin in Konoha. Sure, Konoha had others like Shizune Kato, Suon's apprentice, and Tsunade herself, but the two were not seen in the village for a while. Heck, weren't these two some of the ones who witnessed her trap several enemy shinobi in a wide area genjutsu in the arena? Kurenai slowly stalked toward the two genin, surprising them when she tapped their shoulders. Kurenai sensei, how can we help you? Asked a nervous Sakura, not liking the smile on the older woman's features. Oh, you can help me by offering your opinion on one of my latest genjutsu. How about it? Would you be interested in helping one of Konoha's few female jonin? She asked too sweetly. Sakura and Tenten immediately got a little scared. Behind Kurenai was the visage of an Oni, causing a chill to run down their spines. Remember, little girls, the raven-haired woman said as she bent down to their level. I too am known across the continent as one of the world's few genjutsu experts. Suddenly her smile became softer, so if you need help with your training, you can also ask me for help. The young kunoichi nodded their heads vigorously as the older woman walked away. Just as the elders told her, Geizuru had arrived at the Senju compound to greet the soon-to-be Godime. Alongside her was the rest of her squad: Fakusu, Iguru, and Tora. The four Anbu kneeled before the last Senju. Tsunade-sama, I am Geizuru, the captain of your Anbu guard squad. We swear to you to exceed the performance of our predecessors, the purple-haired woman said. Thank you, Geizuru. You are aware of the other duties you are to perform while you are here, yes? The Anbu captain nodded. Then rise. I have this seal I must place on you so you may pee beyond the gate. Doing as they were told, the Anbu rose to have a seal placed on their left shoulder. When the seal was placed, the four followed their leader inside. Tsunade led them to the traditional sitting room, where each of them sat before her. Soon after everyone was situated, Shizune and Tonton also entered the room, taking seats next to Tsunade. The Anbu noticeably tensed when Shizune entered the room but calmed down at Tsunade's gesture. So for who will be my assistant, Shizune will take up that role. Said woman looked at her master in shock. Tsunade-sama, are you sure you want me to be your assistant? Yes, I am Shizune. You have followed me when you didn't need to, which shows loyalty. You earned the rank of Jonin, which shows skill. And you have assisted me in not only teaching Naruto but improving his knowledge in a field some would think beyond him. That last one caught the Anbu off guard. They had heard of the Uzumaki's performance in the Chunin exams tournament, but like many believed that it was Kakashi's doing. Now they are learning that their soon-to-be Godime was responsible. Shizune thought about what her master had said. If she had that much confidence in her, then she would take the position and help her master. The final clincher was when she saw out of the corner of her eye what appeared to be Tonton giving her an encouraging trotter. I accept, Tsunade-sama, stated a confident Shizune. Tsunade smiled at her apprentice before turning back to the Anbu. Now as for guests. Aside from the usual cadre of the clan and elder council being in attendance, the others to include are Shizune, Tonton and Naruto Uzumaki, she told the Anbu before her. The Anbu nodded in agreement to her instructions. After that, the Anbu left the compound to prepare the security for the inauguration. It had been 2 days since Naruto and Jiraiya had set out on their journey to find this so-called VIP. To say Naruto was annoyed would be an understatement. They had done nothing so far. This is what I gave up my elemental ninjutsu training for? Questioned an irate Naruto. Currently Naruto and Jiraiya were walking into another town within Hai no Kuni. Hey Gaki. Naruto looked up at the taller man. You got any money on you? He asked nonchalantly. Naruto gave him a suspicious look. None for you, pervert, he replied haughtily. Jiraiya grew irate at the snap of the young blonde's tone. So are you going to tell me who this mysterious VIP is yet? Asked an irate Naruto. Since they left, Jiraiya had yet to tell him who they were searching for. Jiraiya once again waved him off. I'll tell you once I get a solid lead on their location. For now, go keep yourself occupied, said the Gama Sanin. Naruto was left gobsmacked. You don't even know where they are. He shouted as the Gama Sanin walked away shouting, Meet back here by sundown. Naruto was grumbling to himself when a puff of smoke on his shoulder drew his attention. When he turned to see what it was, he saw it was Katsuyu, though she was the size of a house cat. Hey Katsuyu, what are you doing here? I am here to take you to the inauguration ceremony for Tsunade-sama Naruto-kun. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Is it that time already? He asked, a little shocked. Yes, it is. Now prepare yourself. When I summon us back to Konoha, it will feel like you are being pulled through a straw at a rather high speed, the slug warned. Oh, and I must thank you for the compliment that you gave us when you relayed your story to Tsunade-sama. Naruto scratched his cheek bashfully. It was nothing, Katsuyu. Naruto took a deep breath before telling Katsuyu was ready. With that, the two disappeared in a puff of smoke only to reappear in front of Tsunade at the roof access to the Hokage Tower. Hey Naru-chan, said the slug Sanin as she gave the younger blonde a hug. Hey Su-chan, replied the younger blonde as he returned the hug. I'd ask how the journey with Jiraiya is going, but we need to get ready for the ceremony, she explained. Naruto nodded happily. He began to make his way out of the room only to be stopped by the older blonde. Where do you think you are going? Naruto looked back confused. Outside to watch the ceremony, replied a confused Naruto. Not out there, you aren't. You are going to be watching from the Hokage Tower with a front row seat. Naruto was excited. This is going to be the first time he will watch a Hokage be sworn in, and he was getting a front row seat. Naruto eagerly followed after Tsunade as she walked to the roof, Katsuyu still on his shoulder. Naruto was ushered by Tsunade to stand by Shizune, while Tsunade herself stood behind the elders who were standing at the edge of the roof with Koharu holding the hat. Below were all the people of Konoha, looking at the tower and eagerly waiting for the announcement of their new Hokage. People of Konoha, though we have been attacked and are all affected by the loss of the Sandaime, let us rejoice, for the 1WHO has returned to aid Konoha in her hour of need. Proclaimed Homura. I present you the Godime Hokage, continued Homura while gesturing to Tsunade as she walked forward. Koharu handed the hat to Tsunade, who placed the hat on her head as she stood proudly before the citizens of Konoha. The people cheered loudly at the announcement of Tsunade being the Godime. Naruto for his part was cheering almost as loudly as the whole of Konoha, while Shizune was cheering a bit more subdued than Naruto. After the ceremony, Tsunade could be found in her new office along with Tonton and Naruto. There were a few other additions in the form of 2 slightly smaller desks than her own and 2 cage bunchen easting in her paperwork. Katsuyu had left back for Shikatsu Forest after the ceremony. Shizune was out gathering the next stack of paperwork for Tsunade while Tonton was asleep on the couch in her office. Tsunade was sitting behind her desk while Naruto sat across from her. So Naruto, tell me, how has the journey to find this VIP has been going? Naruto crossed his arms and let out a huff of irritation. It's so boring, Su-chan. Plus every time we make it to a new town or village he just leaves me as he walks in, saying he needs to talk to his people, complained Naruto. And on top of that he still has yet to tell me who this VIP even is. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful look crossing her face. Alright, I'll look into who you are supposed to be looking for. Since this is a mission ignored by the council, there will be some record of it before a full-blown mission form was filled out and filed for records. When I find out who, I'll send a message via the slugs to let you know. Naruto looked elated at that. Thank you so much, Su-chan. Unknown to Naruto, there was a surprise Tsunade had in store for him. Oh, I also thought of a way to start your elemental ninjutsu training, said Tsunade. Naruto immediately jumped out of his seat and was practically bouncing in place. Despite his training with Tsunade that calmed his hyperactive nature, he was just so excited to continue his training. Really? How? Asked the excited younger blonde. Tsunade came around from her desk and placed a hand on the nearly bouncing boy's shoulders. Calm down, Naruto. At her words, Naruto seemed to go back to his calm self. I will tell you when Shizune returns, as she is bringing something important for us to continue my plan. Now Naruto was eagerly waiting for Shizune to walk through the office door, excited to find out Tsunade's plan. Naruto didn't need to wait that much longer, as Shizune walked through the door, followed by a Kage Bunshin. The two Shizunes came in carrying decently sized stacks of documents. Tsunade let out an inaudible groan seeing the upcoming workload. I'm sorry, Tsunade-sama, but a lot of this backlog from the absence of a Hokage, as well as the documentation pertaining to correspondences from Suna surrounding the invasion, as well as the budget pertaining to the village's repairs. Tsunade let out a heavy sigh. All right, put it on the desk. One of us will get around to it, she said with a defeated tone. Ah, come on, Su-chan. Don't look so down. I'm sure you'll get it done in no time. After all, you're the smartest and most beautiful woman ever. Cheered the young blonde. Tsunade scooped said young blonde into a hug, his face planted into her bust. Well, look at you being a little charmer. Once she set him back down, she coughed into her hand to reset the mood as a light dusting of pink was on the faces of both blondes. Tsunade turned toward Shizune. So did you bring the chakra paper? Shizune nodded with a small smile as she pulled the small slip of paper off one of the stacks she brought in. Excellent. Now Naruto, what I want you to do is channel your chakra into this paper. This will tell us your elemental affinity. Hearing this, Naruto got excited. He went over elemental affinities with Shizune during his initial month training with the two, now he was going to use it. With little coercion, Naruto took the paper from Shizune, eager to see the reaction it was going to have. Naruto channeled his chakra into the paper and the way it reacted was surprising to all, even the hidden Anbu squad in the room. The paper split down the middle while one of the sheets was soaked. Naruto looked to the two older women confused. Nay, Shizune sensei, I thought you said that everyone has one affinity and learns the others unless they have a Kekkei Genkei. So how is it I have demonstrated two affinities? Both women thought about it for a while before a possible solution was offered. It may be the interaction of a member of a Kekkei Genkei holding clan mixing genetics with a shinobi or kunoichi that has no family history of having a Kekkei Genkei. I see what you mean, Shizune. Naruto listened intently as Tsunade explained what her first apprentice had stated. Oftentimes, Kekkei Genkei are dominant genes, which is why they can appear in those who have only one parent from a clan, such as the case with the Haku boy you told me about, Naruto. That being the case, children born from such a union and the clan in question doesn't have an elemental Kekkei Genkei, it is possible the child will develop a secondary affinity. Now Naruto understood. So because Ka-chan was from the Uzumaki clan and Tu-san wasn't from a clan, I not only gained Ka-chan's Kongo Fusa but also a secondary affinity, stated Naruto. That's right, Naruto, praised Shizune. So does that mean that Ka-chan had the futon affinity? Asked Naruto. Actually, I know for a fact that your Ka-chan had a Suiton affinity. The futon actually comes from your Tu-san, spoke Tsunade. Now Naruto was confused. How does that work? At this point, neither medical specialist could offer an explanation. It could be genetics. Similar to how one looks when they are born and grow. Your affinity could be selected at random based on the affinities of your parents, though in this case the primary is chosen by genetics since you got both, theorized Tsunade. With a clap of her hands, Tsunade changed the subject of conversation. Well, now that we know your affinities, I will gather some basic materials for you to study and work on while you are on the road with Jiraiya the pervert. I should have them collected within a few days and I'll send them via a messenger slug. Alright, cheered the younger blonde. For now, said Tsunade as she went through a familiar set of seals, we should get you back to where you last were so Jiraiya doesn't attempt to charge you with desertion, spoke the older blonde as a smoke cloud appeared and dissipated to reveal Katsuyu about the size of a house cat. Greetings, Tsunade-sama, Katsuyu said with a bow. How may I be of assistance? Hello, Katsuyu. I have summoned you to ask if you can take Naruto back to where you had retrieved him. Katsuyu nodded. Of course, Tsunade-sama. With that, the slug crawled her way over to Naruto only for the boy to pick her up into his arms. Before he left, "It was great to see you again, Naru-chan," said Tsunade. "You too, Su-chan. Tell Tonton I said. See you later Shizune Sensei," replied the younger blonde. Tsunade pulled Naruto into another hug before vanished in a puff of smoke with a wide smile on his face. Tsunade heard some giggling in her office. Turning to face the source of the noise, she saw Shizune giggling into her kimono sleeve. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at her apprentice-turned-eye stant. "What?" asked the older blonde. "Oh, it's nothing, Tsunade-sama," said the raven-haired woman as she waved a hand in front of her face. Naruto appeared where Katsuyu first retrieved him. "Thanks, Katsuyu," said the young blonde as he patted Katsuyu on the head, between her orbital tentacles. "It is no problem, Naruto-kun. If you ever have need of me, my clan, or wish to send a message to Tsunade-sama, do not hesitate to call on us." With that, Katsuyu returned once again to Shikatsu Forest. Not too much later, Jiraiya returned from his excursion into town. "Hey Gaki, did you have yourself good time?" questioned Jiraiya. While Naruto did have fun at the inauguration ceremony, he now had to be back on this mission of looking for a VIP he didn't even know the name of. When Jiraiya received no response beyond a blank look, he shrugged it off and gestured for Naruto to follow him. "Come on, it's getting late. I got us a hotel for the night. We'll continue our journey in the morning," said the Gamma Sanin. At that, Naruto lost his cool. Pointing dramatically at the Gamma Sanin, "Okay. That does it." At the shouting, Jiraiya turned his attention towards the young blonde. With a sigh, "What now? Don't brush me off like that. When are you going to tell me who the heck it is we are looking for?" Ranted the blonde. "You really want to know?" Naruto nodded his head seriously. "You really want to know?" Now Jiraiya was leaning towards the blonde, looking at him with one eye. Naruto nodded his head more vigorously. Just when he looked like he was going to tell Naruto, Jiraiya backpedaled. "Well, I'll tell you in the morning," he said as he walked back into town, leaving an angered Naruto behind. The next day had come rather quickly. Naruto awoke from his bed at first light when it poked its way through the room's curtains. He was anxious to have his question answered about who the VIP is and get back to his training. Naruto got dressed as quickly as he could before shouting at the still, sleeping, Gamma Sanin. "Hey, it's morning already. Now are you going to tell me who we are searching for?" His inquiry was met with a pillow to the face. "Shut up, Gaki," Jiraiya said as he used his remaining pillow to cover his face. "The journey is a long one, so get some rest." Naruto threw the pillow on the floor. "If the journey is so long, then wouldn't it be better to get started sooner so as to not waste light?" asked Naruto as he crossed his arms. This was another lesson he missed in the academy. Traveling at first light allows a shinobi to reach their destination in a timely manner and spot the enemy if they lie in wait for you. Jiraiya rolled over to face the blonde. "You know I was trying to let you get some additional sleep." Jiraiya now stood from his bed. "But if you are so eager to get started, then fine." "Finally," cheered the blonde. "But first some breakfast," cheered the Gamma Sanin. Naruto froze. While yes, breakfast was important, Tsunade and Shizune made sure he understood that, but he really wanted to know who the VIP was. Fine," replied Naruto. The two made their way to the inn's eatery for a morning meal. The eatery was laid out like that of a traditional restaurant with tatami mats and floor pillows. Jiraiya ordered a grilled fish meal while Naruto got oats, fruit and eggs. Once again Jiraiya was surprised by the blonde. Last he had heard of Naruto, the boy was addicted to ramen and refused to eat anything else. After their meal, they set out on the road again. "Okay. We've had breakfast and are away from listening ears. Now are you going to tell me who the VIP is?" This mission is kind of cutting into my training time, complained Naruto. Well, if it's training you're after, I have quite a few things that not just anybody knows I could teach you if you can handle it, teased Jiraiya. Besides, you can think of it as compensation for me dragging you along and taking you away from your medical studies, continued the white-haired sage. Naruto thought about it for a bit but decided he would rather have his question answered first. I'm not saying no, but I'd rather find out who the VIP is first. Jiraiya could understand that. Any shinobi worth their salt would rather know the mission details before making a plan. With a shrug, sure kid. So the person we are searching for is set to become the Godime Hokage. This statement took Naruto by surprise. Tsunade-chan was already sworn in, so who could it be? Thought a bewildered Naruto. Taking his silence as shock of being selected for such an important mission, Jiraiya continued. We are searching for my former teammate Tsunade Senju, said Jiraiya as he dropped the bomb. I'm sure you have heard of her as a medic nin in training and all, he said with a goofy grin. Naruto stopped in his tracks while giving the white-haired man a deadpan stare. Jiraiya was greatly confused by the action. He figured the kid would be elated to meet someone of Tsunade's caliber. Yo, what's up? I'd figure that you'd be bouncing up and down to meet someone of Tsunade's caliber as a medic. Naruto took a deep breath before slowly letting it out. He looked Jiraiya in the eyes before saying, she's already in Konoha. Jiraiya looked flabbergasted at the kid. Great, the kid must have taken a hit to the head at some point. May need to have Tsunade look into that, said Jiraiya as he dragged his hand down his face. Maybe he would need to give the boy some training to make sure he wasn't seeing things. That's not possible, kid. If she were, the whole village would have known. She's quite the celebrity with being the world's best medic, the queen of elixirs, and the Mago Masumi of the Shodai, said Jiraiya. Plus, if she were there, my spy network would have told me. Since they didn't say that when I checked in with it yesterday, she clearly isn't there now. Jiraiya turned away and began walking once again while giving a wave of his hand to Naruto for the boy to follow. Now come on, we have to find her. Naruto, with his deadpan look still intact, caught up to the Gamma Sanin. Jiraiya could hear some faint grumbling coming from the boy slightly behind him. You okay, Gaki? Yeah, just fine, replied Naruto in a heated tone through clenched teeth. Now to Jiraiya, the boy seemed to be upset. You sure? You sound upset. I am. I'm telling you she's back in Konoha. And I'm telling you she's not. Yes she is. No she isn't. Yes she is. Naruto shot back, but this time 6 golden chain with spear tips as the leading link came from his back. Naruto threw them out towards Jiraiya, who ran away dodging the chains, all the while he was screaming for him to calm down and there was no need to be mad that he was wrong. Back in Konoha, Tsunade and Shizune were getting the basics Naruto would need to study for his futon affinity, as it was his primary, as well as a few medical books for him to study in between practices or while his bunshins practiced with his futon affinity. For the instructions of the beginner exercise, they were copied from an instruction scroll from the Senju library. She even went out of her way to speak with a former Anbu that had once been a part of her former sensei's guard squad. Sadly, the operative had been discharged due to the loss of their arm. Due to their expertise in futon, Tsunade intended to have Naruto visit them when he returns from the mission he is on to continue his futon training. For his medical studies, Tsunade wanted Naruto to prepare for the more intensive aspect of being a field medic. This includes stitching, wound packing and the resetting of joints and bones in the field. All of this was so that the next they meet she can begin having him learn the Shozen Jutsu. He needed to know all of this information as the jutsu only allowed the medic to stimulate cellular growth and allow the body to heal itself. However, if the injury has separated too much tissue, then a medic may use too much chakra for one patient's recovery, leaving many more in a dangerous position. Because of this, different surgery and medical procedures for healing wounds without chakra were a must for any good medic. A medic also needed to know about the different cells they are stimulating for this regeneration. If the wrong ones are stimulated or stimulated too much, additional health problems could arise. There is also the risk cell growth not occurring properly, leading to cancerous growth within a patient. To that end, the first book she included was Cellular Growth and Stimulation: How Medical Chakra Affects a Body's Cells. With this, Naruto should be ready to begin practicing the Shozen Jutsu under her supervision. She was also sending at least one book about fundamentals of the fields of advanced field surgery operations. Admittedly, these were nowhere near as large as the first text. Naruto would be grateful that all of this fit within one storage scroll. At the front of the scroll was a table of contents as well as instructions he was to follow when it came to covering the material within. She recommended splitting his focus between the basics of futon as well as the large text she sent. The other material he could hold off until he could practice in hers or Shizun's presence, but he must begin the larger text if he wished to learn the Shozen Jutsu. She made it very clear this was non-negotiable. She also left a small note at the bottom with another seal for Naruto to use after he gets the scroll. Sitting on her desk was a messenger slug waiting to take the scroll to Naruto. The slug was a bright pink with violet spots all over its body while being the size of large owl. With a flourish of her brush, Tsunade concluded her messages to Naruto and began creating the seals to store the gathered items. When she sealed the last item into the standard size green scroll, Tsunade turned her attention to the messenger slug. Placing the scroll in front of the slug, "Please get this to Naruto Tsutsumi," requested the slug Sanin. The decently sized gastropod crawled over the scroll before immolating it into itself so it could be secure. Once done, Tsutsumi bowed its head and in a feminine voice replied, "Of course, Tsunade-sama. I shall deliver it at once." With that, Tsutsumi vanished in a puff of smoke towards Naruto's location. With that done, Tsunade joined her bunchins in completing the manageable amount of paperwork she needed to handle. Naruto and Jiraiya were traveling down the road to the next town. The duo was quiet as Naruto was still upset that they were on a useless journey to find his Hokage sensei, who is already back in Konoha. Jiraiya was happy that the blonde was not trying to skewer him with the Kongo Fusa anymore. Since he had yet to receive a message from Tsunade yet and they were still traveling, Naruto decided to get some training in by going back to one of the chakra control exercises Tsunade had him do when he was training for the Chunin exams. Jiraiya had been interested in what Naruto was doing. He had seen the boy stop a few times on the road and pick up a few rocks that seemed to have a variety of colors. He then saw Naruto grip said rocks really tightly to the point they became powder. After that, he saw Naruto hold his hands out with the dust cupped in each hand. After that, he didn't pay much attention to what he was doing. What he failed to notice was Naruto had closed his eyes to focus on the world around him and the powdered rocks began to shift in his hands. If the boy was going to be doing something, Jiraiya had something better in mind. "Hey, Naruto," he shouted, getting the boy's attention. "Since I drew you away from whatever training you would probably be doing back in Konoha, why don't I make it up to you?" Naruto stopped walking but kept shifting ground rock in his hands. With promise of training, Naruto looked up towards the older man with excitement barely hidden in his eyes. "What did you have in mind?" asked the excited blonde. Jiraiya went through some very familiar seals. With a decent-sized poof of smoke, an orange toad with segmented plate armor along its chest and shoulders, an odachi in its webbed hands and a large scroll wrapped in its tongue. The toad placed the scroll at Naruto's feet as Jiraiya spoke, "I will teach you to summon the toads. With enough practice you can be a great sage like yours truly," he said proudly. Naruto looked down at the scroll before him, taking special notice of his two sans name next to the Gamma Sanin and the latest blank space for the next person to sign. Naruto looked up from his Tsunade's name back up to Jiraiya. What he said next surprised the Gamma Sanin. Sorry but no thanks. Jiraiya went bug-eyed at the words. Hopping off the toad's head, he looked down at the blonde. And why would you refuse to sign the contract of the mighty toads? Naruto didn't break eye contact. I already have my own summons and they are pretty cool, he said with a mild smile. Once again Jiraiya was surprised by the answer. Calming himself down, Jiraiya dismissed the toad as he crossed his arms. Raising an eyebrow he asked, "Can I ask what your summons are?" Naruto shook his head vehemently. "Nope. No way. I was told to keep that a secret," stated Naruto as he crossed his arms, using his chakra to keep the rock dust glued to his hands so he could keep training. Jiraiya pinched his nose in irritation. While it is a good idea to keep what summons you have as a secret, keeping such knowledge from your allies could prevent a team from making sound plans when planning mission operations. Looking down at the blonde, you have to tell me what your contract is. As team leader I am ordering you. Naruto stuck his tongue out at the Gamma Sanin. I refuse, he said vehemently. Jiraiya's eyebrow began to twitch. You need to tell me. I'm squad leader. It allows me to better strategize for any confrontation we may run into. Yeah right. You just want to trick me into giving away sensitive information. You may tell people your summoning contract whenever you meet someone, but I was told to keep it safe and not to tell anyone who doesn't need to know. Why you? If you don't tell me I'll report you for insubordination when Tsunade is sworn in. Bit back Jiraiya. She already is. And go ahead and tell her she won't say anything. As an Uzumaki, it is my right to hide my clan techniques from those unassociated with the clan. The Kuchio's no jutsu is not a clan technique, shouted the blonde. But the clan OCIATED with the contract is. Like the monkeys for the Sarutobi clan. At this point Jiraiya was losing it. The kid was right in a sense, but he wasn't going to let a Gaki get one over on him. Once again Jiraiya pinched his nose in annoyance. I'm telling you she isn't, or else my spy network would have told me. Letting out a sigh to drop this argument, Jiraiya told Naruto with a smug grin, let's see if you keep your stubbornness when you meet her. She can be rather stubborn, he said fondly. So lost was Jiraiya in his reminiscing, he didn't hear Naruto's reply to his words. Yeah she can, he said softly. With that the tension between the two seemed to die down. Fine. Since you won't sign the Toad contract, the other thing I have to teach you is a jutsu made by the Yondaime. At that Naruto stopped all movement. Jiraiya almost thought the boy stopped breathing. Suddenly, with speed befitting his father, Naruto appeared in front of Jiraiya's face starry-eyed. The scary part was he actually seemed to be levitating. That was until Jiraiya felt something heavy on his chest. Shifting his eyes down, Naruto was clinging to him by his knees. If the Gamma Sanin didn't know any better, he would bet that Naruto was channeling chakra to his knees to adhere to him like he was using the surface walking exercise. Jiraiya attempted to brush the kid off him. When he finally succeeded, yeah, it's called the Rasengan. At that Jiraiya formed the ball of chakra in his hands. Naruto was immediately in awe of the jutsu his Tsunade created. He heard from his lessons with Shizune Sensei that it was one of the jutsu he was most known for. Sadly, he wasn't far enough in his Fuinjutsu training to study the formula of the Hiraishin no Jutsu to use it himself. For now, Naruto closed his eyes and focused on the jutsu in front of him, sensing the chakra within the sphere. He saw how it was a large amount that was being directed in multiple directions to give it the drilling power it was said to have. Jiraiya saw the kid go wide-eyed with awe at the jutsu. Before he could demonstrate it, Naruto suddenly closed his eyes and looked like he was concentrating on something. Not understanding his actions, Jiraiya shouted, "Oi! Gaki! Pay attention! The demonstration isn't over yet." Naruto quickly opened his eyes, though he had already sensed what Jiraiya had been doing with his chakra, so he was eager to try it himself. Suddenly Jiraiya rammed the jutsu into a nearby tree, carving into the defenseless flora with ease. Seeing the power of his two Sans jutsu got Naruto even more eager to try it for himself. Seeing Naruto's enthusiasm, Jiraiya pulled out a small scroll from his vest. Barely rolling it open on the ground, Naruto noticed 3 storage seals. From the first one came out a large box of water balloons. Grabbing 2, Jiraiya threw one to Naruto. Jiraiya held up the balloon in his hand. Alright, the first step you will want to focus on is rotation. With that, Jiraiya's balloon began to get all lumpy like it was full of bees trying to escape. Suddenly, it exploded with a loud pop. The idea is to rotate the water in the balloon until it. Jiraiya's words died before he could finish as Naruto's balloon promptly exploded. Jiraiya was left speechless. Soon he snapped back to reality and began ranting. No, 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 no. There is no way you got that in one try, he said as he pointed accusingly at Naruto. Naruto for his part just shrugged. Controlling his chakra isn't anything new. Separating the different colors of rock dust is a harder manipulation exercise in his opinion. He was almost struck with a water balloon Jiraiya had thrown at him, but he ducked under it before he could get soaked. Hey, what was that for? He shouted as he pointed at Jiraiya. Jiraiya grabbed another balloon and threw it at him, but this time he caught it. Do it again. But this time I'm watching you. TCH. Fine, retorted the blonde. Holding his hand out for Jiraiya to see, he popped the balloon the same way Jiraiya did. Jiraiya could only hang his mouth open as shock. As he raised a shaky finger to point at the blonde, all he could do was, HHHHHH, how did you get it so quickly? Naruto just shrugged. It isn't that hard when you've been drilled in chakra control like I have, he said as he puffed out his chest. What? No way. There is no way that Gaki Kakashi is that good at chakra control, ranted Jiraiya as he was stomping the ground. Naruto was confused by Jiraiya's actions. It's not like rotating the chakra is hard. Probably the hardest part would be rotating it in multiple directions at once, though with his control that was negligible as he was already used to having his chakra move in several directions at once due to the color sand exercise he was trained to get down in both hands. Sadly, he lost his current batch in his excitement and would need to make another set later. As Jiraiya was stomping the ground, Naruto took 2 more water balloons and decided to see if he could pop the balloons in his hands simultaneously. Though it took him negligibly longer to do so, he decided to keep practicing if the Gamma Sanin was going to be ranting. When Jiraiya finally calmed down, he noticed the box he brought with him was empty and several popped balloons were at Naruto's feet. Jiraiya rubbed his eyes in shock. Now he was thinking he had imagined that Naruto got it down so quickly. Unknown to the Gamma Sanin, Naruto actually got his time in using both hands to match the feat he had shown Jiraiya earlier. Noticing that he seemed to be done with what he was doing, Naruto asked the Gamma Sanin, so what's next? Jiraiya placed his hand on the second seal, pulling out a box of rubber balls. Pulling out 2 from the new box, he ped one to Naruto as he kept the second. Alright, for this step you are going to want to do the same thing you did in the first step, but you are going to want to add more power to it. Before Naruto got started, he asked for a second ball. Confused, Jiraiya decided to humor the boy, so gave him a second ball. Holding out his hands, Naruto makes the balls bubble up before he pops them simultaneously at the same speed as he did the first time. After all he needed to change was the amount he used but not the control over it. Once again, Jiraiya was left speechless, letting the ball in his hands fall to the ground. Before Jiraiya could go on ranting once again, Naruto threw a spare ball at Jiraiya, hitting him in the head. Jiraiya scowled at the blonde, who gave him a look that told him he wanted to know the next part. With a huff, Jiraiya got out the last box that carried normal balloons, though these were deflated. Jiraiya blew up 2 balloons before he paused. He blew up a third balloon before throwing two at Naruto, who promptly caught them. Taking a deep breath, Jiraiya explained the last step. Alright, the last step is containment. Saying that, Jiraiya created a Rasengan within the balloon, which Naruto picked up. Understanding what he had to do, Naruto formed his own set of Rasengan within his own balloons, doing his best to contain both chakra spheres as he made them. Jiraiya watched Naruto hold his two balloons in his palms, though nothing was happening. Not a ripple, not a bump, not even a shift in the rubber. Getting impatient, Jiraiya shouted, "Well, aren't you going to do something?" Naruto was startled by the sudden shouting but kept up his concentration due to his training with Tsunade. "What was that about?" he shouted back. Jiraiya pointed at the blonde. "You aren't doing anything. I mean, you haven't even popped your balloon yet." Naruto was now pissed. That's what he was getting shouted at for. Fine. With that, Naruto charged a nearby tree and slammed his two balloons into it, resulting in the same effect that Jiraiya had shown when he demonstrated the jutsu. Naruto turned back to the Gamma Sannin with a smug smirk on his face, only for it to fall as said Sannin was muttering incoherently about impossibilities as he walked on towards the next town, leaving a confused Naruto behind. Before he could walk on and catch up with the dazed Sannin, a poof of smoke and the sound of someone being summoned caught his attention. Turning around, he saw a pink slug with purple dots across its body that was the size of a large owl. Naruto gave the large slug a big smile and a cheerful, "Hello." The slug for its part gave a small bow as it spoke. "Greetings, Naruto-san. I am Tsutsumi and I come bearing a scroll from Tsunade-sama." That got Naruto's attention and he eagerly asked the slug if he could have it. "Yes, young summoner, I have it. If you shall wait patiently, I shall produce it." Naruto saluted the slug and watched as the slug's side crawled from its position in front of him. Naruto had to fight the urge to run over and grab the scroll once he saw it, but his lessons in etiquette kicked in, so he didn't move from his spot. The slug grabbed the scroll with its oral orifice, which it then used to hand Naruto the green scroll. "Thank you, Tsutsumi," Naruto said eagerly as he opened the scroll, anxious to see what Tsunade has for him to do. After all, the training he has been doing with Jiraiya has been rather easy. When he opened it, he began to read the message Tsunade wrote at the front of the scroll that covered what was inside the scroll and what he should focus on until he meets up with her or Shizune again, as well as what text he should read. Naruto, being excited about the new text to read, rolled up the scroll in his hands so he could retrieve a small notepad that Tsunade had on him, which he packed in his storage scroll, in the event he thought of questions he wanted answered while he was away from her or Shizune. Creating a kage bunshin, he gave it the notepad to transcribe any questions he got while he read. Afterwards he gave the gastropod a thumbs up and a thanks. "Hey, I'm curious," Naruto spoke to the slug, who gave a nod of approval for Naruto to keep going. "Is there anything I can give you guys as a token of thanks?" asked the blonde. The gastropod seemed to think about it for a moment before speaking. "Well, most of us prefer food like apples if you have any, though providing us thanks is not necessary as we are happy to aid our summoners," explained the slug. Naruto scratched his head in thought as to where he was going to get an apple to show his thanks to his summons until the slug in front of him told him of a small note just below the note that described the location of each item in the scroll. Reading it aloud. "Dear Naruto, I figured at some point that you would want to extend some kindness to the slugs for reasons of your own, so I included some apples right under this note as many of them prefer the fruit. Train hard and don't be afraid to prepare questions for me or Shizune to answer for you when you return. If you cannot wait, send them to either of us by one of the many messenger slugs. Also, I haven't found out the target of your mission, but I shall and let you know. Tsunade." Naruto was grateful that Tsunade prepared ahead for him. With that, he popped out an apple and gave it to Tsutsumi, who happily took it. It was then that Naruto remembered something else. "Oh Tsutsumi, can you take a message back to Su-chan and tell her that the mission I'm on is to find her? And can you ask her to get the mission cancelled?" Tsutsumi nodded and summoned herself away. When she left, Naruto got the book out and looked to his bunshin, silently asking if it was ready to write questions, which it answered with a nod, though with a suspicious smile. With that, Naruto set out to follow Jiraiya, who had a pretty good lead on the pair but was stopped by his bunshin that pointed at the rubber balls and balloons that were left in the middle of the road. Ranting about irresponsible perverts, Naruto packed up the 2 crates by placing back in the storage scroll Jiraiya had brought them out of before getting back to his book. If nothing else, he could use the balls to pelt the Gamma Sanin if he ever annoyed him further. Back in her office, one of Tsunade's bunshin had found the mission record outlining Jiraiya's task. What she found out certainly was enough to make her want to drink, because if the fool had stuck around a little longer in the meeting this was issued, he wouldn't be out wasting the villages in Naruto's time. Suddenly there was a poof of smoke on her desk, causing the Anbu to tense. When it cleared, Tsutsumi was once again back in her office and the Anbu relaxed. "Hello again, Tsutsumi," said the stressed slug Sanin. "Greetings, Tsunade-sama," the slug replied with a bow. "I ask for you to pardon the interruption, but Naruto-san asked me to deliver a message to you." Tsunade raised a quizzical eyebrow to this, curious as to what Naruto could want. She just sent his lesson plan so he couldn't have made much headway into cellular growth and stimulation, how medical chakra affects a body's cells. "What is his message?" she asked, curiosity evident in her voice. "He requested me to inform you that his mission is to locate you and bring you back to become the Godime. He also asked you to cancel the mission. Though the mission seems rather odd to me, Tsunade-sama, as it is my understanding you already are the Godime," relayed the pink slug. Tsunade let out a groan. "Well, at least I won't have to tell him." She returned her focus to Tsutsumi. "Thank you for his message, Tsutsumi. That will be all. You can return to Shikatsu Forest," said the slug Sanin. With a bow of her head, Tsutsumi left in a puff of smoke. As soon as the summons was gone, Shizune walked into the office, but with only a single sheet of paper. It could either be for the village's reconstruction or another correspondence from Suna. Seeing the irate expression on her master's face, Shizune asked, "Tsunade-sama, is everything okay?" Letting out a long sigh, Tsunade answered her first apprentice. "No, Shizune. I am irritated as I just found out Naruto's mission is to locate me and convince me to become the Godime." Shizune was left silent as she stood in front of her master's desk, confused at what she just heard. "Huh," was her only reply. Figuring Shizune was confused about how such a mission was ignored, Tsunade clarified, "It seems that during the meeting I crashed, Jiraiya had proposed a mission to locate me to become the Godime. However, he left before I entered and took the position. So how did this mission still go through if you were named the next Hokage?" asked the confused I-Stant. "Probably because no one was willing to admit to the boss of a mistake made to save themselves from any perceived repercussions. Like any job," she says with a heavy sigh. "So instead, they kept silent hoping it would blow over." Tsunade gave her first apprentice a look that said, "This is how it always goes." Letting out another sigh, Tsunade brought out a bottle of sake and dish. Taking a single dish, she told Shizune, "Call the elders into my office, I need to talk with them." Nodding quickly, Shizune left to retrieve the elders. After some time, the 3 elders stood before Tsunade, who she herself looked rather annoyed as she had her hands crossed before her face as she leaned on her desk with Shizune behind her as she held onto Taunton. "So," Tsunade starts with a neutral but heavy tone. "Is there a reason that you or the clan council neglected to mention to me Jiraiya not only went on a mission to locate myself but also decided to take Naruto with him?" Homura and Kaharu were rather nervous. Danzo was calm as he had been in this situation many times before. "Well, you see, Tsunade Dono," began Kaharu, "he had already left the meeting before you arrived, and you know how he can be when he wants to set out, finished a nervous Homura who was fidgeting with his glees. Yes, of course I know how he can be. But he approached Naruto, who in turn informed me he was leaving on a mission. If I had known at the time what his mission was, I could have walked with him to Jiraiya's location and prevented him from leaving, said Tsunade, who was irritated at bureaucrats ping the blame along to cover their hide. Pardon me, Tsunade Dono, spoke Danzo, but why would Naruto approach you about him leaving on a mission then say Kakashi? Tsunade looked at him for a moment before speaking. He is my second apprentice. I met him before the final stage of the Chunin selection exams and took him under my wing, explained the Godime. This filled in a lot of information for the Warhawk. Well, that certainly explains his sudden interest in medicine, commented Danzo while the other two were left in a state of shock. Danzo broke the silence that set in after that revelation. We are sorry for not informing you of this, Tsunade Dono, but nothing can be done to change the events that have already happened. Koharu and Homura nodded vehemently with the declaration. True, Tsunade replied, but her look became cold. If you ever hide such information of importance from me again. She let the threat hang in the air, though Danzo seemed to be the only one not affected by the chill that permeated the room. Yes, Tsunade Dono, quickly replied Homura and Koharu. Yes, Tsunade Dono, replied Danzo in a far calmer tone. You are dismissed. With that the three elders left. Letting out another sigh, Tsunade summoned a messenger slug, this one neon green with black spots. This one spoke with a masculine voice. Tsunade grabbed 2 blank sheets of paper, as a scroll would be such a waste for such a small message. Greetings, Tsunade-sama, the slug said with a bow. I am Kazu, how may I be of assistance to you? He asked. Hello, Kazu. I have 2 messages for you to deliver. One of which I need you to take to Jiraiya. He is traveling with Naruto, so use him as a means of locating Jiraiya. The other I need you to take to Mount Myoboku. In the event Jiraiya fails to heed my message, hopefully the Toads can help convince him to return, she says, but doesn't have much confidence in the plan as Jiraiya often acts on his own accords. Do not fear, Tsunade-sama, said Kazu as he bowed his head. I shall ensure the messages are delivered swiftly and promptly. Kazu took the 2 letters, swallowing them as Tsunade told him the order she was handing them over in. The first one I am handing you is for the Toads, the next one is for Jiraiya. Give him his first, as it will ensure the Toads are able to act in the event they question him about heeding my message. With a nod, Kazu was off to do his duty for his summoner. Tsunade leaned back into her chair with a sigh. Do you think Jiraiya-sama will listen to your message, Tsunade-sama? Asked Shizune. Honestly, I don't think so. He can be really dense at times, needing to see things for himself to believe them or follow his gut, which has mixed results of its own, replied the Godime. For now, we need to hope that Jiraiya will listen to the messages, or else I may need to go get him myself so that idiot will listen, said the annoyed blonde. Neji was tired. I can't understand how Lee can do this every day. The Hyuga thought as he was breathing heavily with his hands on his knees. He had been joining his sensei, Might Guy, for the man's morning workout. Neji was doing this to make up for the shortcomings he discovered during the invasion as he fought against Suna and Oto Shinobi. A problem arose, however, when he learned he wasn't used to this intense and extensive of a workout. Sure, Guy-sensei made sure his genin trained physically, but what he and Lee did is far beyond what the other genin went through during team training. Neji was left tired, sweaty, exhausted, and in pain from the strain on his lungs and the muscles he rarely used for his juken. He was pulled from his thoughts as his sensei shouted towards him. Yosh, Neji, now is not the time to be tired. We must push forward in the spirit of youth. For us to grow stronger, we must push ourselves and set new goals to achieve. Now grab some water and let's keep going, shouted Guy as Neji continued to pant. Neji could say nothing as he watched his boisterous sensei shout and act as if they didn't just do half a marathon with incremental sprints throughout the run. Neji wanted to stop here, but He thought of his failures at being too slow to close the gap during his fights. He also thought of his friend Lee. He wouldn't quit and it allowed him to defy fate. If he truly wanted to be the master of his own destiny, then he would need to fight on himself. Neji gave his sensei a look. Guy saw something in the boy's pupilless eye. A fire he had never seen in the boy before. It seemed the heat in Neji's eyes went from his bitter anger to that of a man who has learned what he has and will do everything he can to protect it. Guy gave his student a nod, and they continued their training. Shikamaru lay on the ground, bruised, tired, and really regretting asking for more intense training. His teammates, Ino and Choji, weren't faring much better, especially with Ino's complaint about how tough the new training was. Though that didn't stop her from participating. Originally Asuma was getting ready to lay down some kind of speech about how he was going to start making their training intense, like how when he had gone through when he was a genin but was beaten to the punch by Ino. She had said that they needed more intense training, claiming she didn't want to lose to Naruto, who was being of aid to her home. Truth be told, it had bugged Ino how she was pretty much useless until clean-up and repair missions were being ignored. That meant for a whole month she had to sit back and watch as some of her friends helped out and were seen as protectors while she had to watch from the sidelines. Shikamaru was no better. Originally, he believed he could skate through life without a care in the world. But now he was getting hit with the reality he lived in. At any time, someone or something can happen that would lead to those he cared about being in danger. In a controlled environment he lost. Shikamaru's tactical mind could do nothing as he had neither the skills nor the resources to put up a fight against a foe who had a counter to the meager skills he has. Questions he'd never consider were now pushing himself to the fore of his mind as he thinks, but on one came to his aid in solving the questions before him. Could he look Choza in the eyes if he was so weak he lost his friend? Could he live with the idea he could have been stronger to keep his friend safe but he wasn't because it was too much work? These thoughts plagued him the entire time he was sidelined while some of his old CL mates aided in the village's recovery. It was this change in attitude that led him to agreeing with Ino when it came to more intense training. Shikamaru was the first to slowly pick himself up, followed by Choji and Ino. With a smirk he asked his sensei, "Is that all you got?" while he kept panting. His answer was a smirk from his sensei before the intense training resumed. Training and certification. While Konoha and its citizens were recovering in their own way from the alt, many of the prisoners were locked away, such as the children of the late Kazekage who were in a detention cell within Anbu HQ. They were taken there due to their high priority status, as well as the special containment cell for Jinchuriki, the Yondaime set up for Konoha after his encounter with the Hachibi's host during the Third Great Shinobi War. Gaara was silent, as was Shukaku, as the redhead sat in his cell. The large tanuki was embered as it lost by being sat on, so it kept silent in the hopes of forgetting this loss. With the newfound silence, Gaara was left alone with his thoughts, sometimes remembered what he was told from the last person he ever had a meaningful connection with. His uncle had told the poor boy that he was never loved, giving rise to the selfish and murder-crazed ideology the boy created as a means of shielding himself from the pain of loneliness. Now he had lost. To him, his life was now forfeit and that he should die. Unknown to Gaara was that his silence was worrying his siblings. Never before had Gaara ever been silent and not eyeing up his next kill. Now he was silent and huddled in a corner, trying to bury himself in the darkness that surrounded him. "Gaara," called out Tamari. She received no answer. "Hey bro, you okay?" asked Kankuro. He too received no answer. Before Kankuro could continue his words, Gaara spoke up. "Leave me alone," he said in a fearful monotone. "Gaara, talk to us," pleaded Tamari. "Come on. Why won't you talk to us, man?" questioned Kankuro. The two were met with silence that seemed to stretch on for hours before the Suna Jinchuriki answered. "I lost," was his reply. This response irked his Onisan. So, was Kankuro's harsh reply, which Tamari glared at him for. Not hindered by the reply, Gaara continued, I lost, therefore my existence is forfeit. With every kill I was able to prove that I existed. Now I am going to die because I was beaten, replied Gaara. His reply silenced his siblings. They had never known the reason that Gaara killed. They figured, like everyone else, that Gaara killed because he was bloodthirsty from Shukaku or because someone got in his way. Now that he explained it, it made sense as to why didn't just kill anyone that got in his way but those that would be missed or draw a crowd. They were snapped from their thoughts by Gaara's next statement. I guess my death would make you feel safe as I am a monster to both of you. That immediately got to both Temari and Kankuro. That's not true, Gaara. They both shouted. The next thing Gaara said silenced the two. If that's not true, then why did you leave me alone? To wallow in loneliness and the fear of everyone else. He snapped back as he looked towards them. They had no response initially. But ever so softly they spoke up, with Temari going first. We did try, Gaara. This stunned the red-headed boy. We tried to get close to you but the sand would lash out sometimes. We were afraid that it would hurt us. It's why we didn't get close to you until we started our shinobi training. Gaara said nothing for a while. We stuck with you even when you threatened to kill us because you are our brother, even with the monster of Suna stuck inside you, spoke Kankuro. Gaara was hesitant but he did speak again. How do I know you won't hurt me like Ojisan Yashimaru? Temari and Kankuro remembered when they were told that Gaara had killed their Ojisan. They never knew the circumstances behind it. But there was one thing they did know. Despite his murderous personality, Gaara never lied. So that meant that, in some way, their Ojisan had betrayed Gaara. Despite their soft answer, Gaara heard it all the same. Because we're siblings, spoke Temari. Kankuro nodded as he raised his hand for a thumbs up, and we always got each other's backs no matter what. Slowly, painstakingly slowly, Gaara seemed to form a smile. In some ways Gaara knew his siblings were right. Ever since they had become a team, no matter how much he threatened them, they always stuck with him. Kankuro even stood his ground against him during the second phase of the Chunin exams. Perhaps he could trust his siblings. It had been a few days since the message from Tsunade arrived before Naruto and Jiraiya, meaning the pair had been on the road now for a week. Jiraiya had ignored the letter as was predicted. Why did you ignore the letter, you damn pervert? Jiraiya looked down at his traveling companion, who was becoming an annoyance. Because she wrote me that letter to throw me off her trail. She obviously found out somehow that I am on a mission to locate her and she doesn't want to be found, he explained with confidence. Or maybe she found out about this mission and is trying to recall us since she is the Godime. Shouted the irritated blonde as his chains once again made an appearance. Jiraiya turned his head back to the road but his attention was firmly on the chains until the blonde would have them receded. He no longer feared the chains, at least externally. On the inside he was praying that the blonde would not hurl them at him again. Jiraiya replied, I told you before, kid, if she was in Konoha my spy network would know about it. His response seemed to only irritate the blonde even more. Quickly remembering his experience with Kushina, as long as he changed the subject fast enough, she would calm down and not hurt him. He wasn't going to tell Naruto about his parents yet, he wasn't sure the boy would take it well given how he grew up. He then thought of something. By the way, how did you know the message was from Tsunade before it was even handed over? Here Naruto looked rather happy as the chains receded once again. Because she is the slug Sanin, Jiraiya could slap himself for such an easy answer, and she allowed me to sign the slug contract, finished the blonde, hoping that would get the Gamma Sanin to believe him so they could return to Konoha. Not possible, kid. The last person she allowed to sign the slug contract was Shizune, her apprentice. Hey, I'm her apprentice too, shot back the blonde. Yeah, Jiraiya said with a wave, just because you are good at Iryo ninjutsu doesn't make you her apprentice, waved off the white-haired man. I am too her second apprentice. Naruto was attempted to forego what Shizune taught him about keeping summoning affiliations a secret, despite him already saying that he signed the slug contract, just to prove this pervert wrong, but he started to take deep breaths with long exhales to stop himself. Just as he was calming down, Jiraiya asked him, "So how did you know that they liked apples?" This time Naruto kept his eyes on the road. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Oh, try me." Naruto shrugged. "Tsunade-chan told me," he said nonchalantly. "You're right, I don't believe you," replied the Gamma Sanin. At that, Naruto pulled out the green scroll Tsunade sent him with all his training materials. Opening it up, he held it up so Jiraiya could read it, but channeled chakra through his hands to solidify his grip, and into the scroll to prevent it from tearing if Jiraiya tried to snatch it from him. Seeing the boy holding out a scroll, Jiraiya put his hand out. "Let me see the scroll," he ordered. "No," replied the blonde adamantly. "There are clan secrets in here so you can see with your eyes and read the message I'm showing you." Irritated, Jiraiya reaches out to take the scroll at a speed Naruto was not prepared for, only for him to find he couldn't take it. The scroll itself was stiffer than any metal he had ever come across, while the boy seemed to be rooted to the ground like a tree. "Let me see it," Jiraiya grunted out as he pulled, only shifting the young blonde at the shoulders. "No. See with your eyes, not your hand," retorted the blonde. Not getting anywhere with attempting to take the scroll from him, Jiraiya viewed the message the blonde was showing him. The boy is either really strong or telling the truth, thought the Gamma Sanin. When he leaned back up, Naruto rolled the scroll back up and put it back in his large utility pouch. When he looked back up at Jiraiya, he noticed the taller man appeared irate. "So you were in contact with Tsunade and didn't tell anyone?" Naruto shrugged. "She didn't want it know she was in Konoha," he replied with indifference. Now Jiraiya was the one losing his patience. "So what? You should have told someone. If you did, we could have talked to her before she left and we wouldn't be out here tracking her down." Now Naruto's irritation came back. "She is back in Konoha. If you would listen to the message she sent you, we could go back and not be out here. I keep telling you, she isn't there. If she were, my spy network would tell me. Since it hasn't, it means she isn't there and we need to keep looking." "Ah," whined the agitated blonde. Back in Konoha, Kakashi was in Suon's office. He was surprised to see two more Tsunade working on the paperwork he had often seen the Sandaime complaining about. "Can I help you, Kakashi?" asked the blonde Hokage. Sorry to disturb you, Hokage-sama," said a sheepish Jonin. "I was wondering if you knew where Naruto was. I know it has been a few days after your inauguration, but I can't seem to find him and was wondering if you may know where he is." Tsunade let out a long sigh as she leaned back in her chair. "Yes, I know where he is," she said, annoyance rolling off her in waves. "That's good. I hope he isn't in any kind of trouble," replied the silver-haired Jonin. Letting out another sigh, "He isn't in trouble. My former teammate Jiraiya has taken him on a mission to locate me and have me become the Godime Hokage." Kakashi looked at his leader with a disbelieving look in his eye. "Surely you are joking, Tsunade-sama." Tsunade shook her head. "Sadly, I am not." At that, she pulled out the mission form the council had filed to make the mission official. Kakashi looked down at the document in disbelief, mostly that Jiraiya didn't already know Tsunade was the Godime. Kakashi looked at his Hokage once again. "But," Tsunade cut him off, "yes, Jiraiya doesn't seem to believe I am in Konoha." Letting out another sigh, Tsunade spoke offhandedly, "It's really cutting into his training time." Kakashi believed she was talking about his training of Naruto. Granted, most of it was centered around his taijutsu with some chakra control, but the route of a medic was surprising choice the silver-haired Jonin didn't see coming. "I mean, I still wasn't sure what to train him in other than refining his basics. He didn't really show an interest in any other field beyond ninjutsu, but he needed something to supplement such a field. Especially if he wanted to progress in rank," said the copy nin. Still, becoming a medic was quite the shock. Tsunade smiled fondly, remembering her time she spent not only with the younger blonde but his eagerness to learn when she and Shizune got past his academic insecurities. She spoke with the fondness she was feeling. Oh, once we got past his remedial lessons, he took to it rather well. Honestly, it's probably the large amount of things to learn that keeps him interested, theorized Tsunade. Kakashi just stared wide-eyed at his Hokage. Pardon me, Tsunade-sama, but how would you know that about Naruto? I mean, no offense, but Naruto wasn't exactly the most studious of individuals. Once again Tsunade looked off fondly into the distance as she spoke. Well, it was interesting to see his rapt attention as I talked once Shizune and I got him to open up. He wouldn't stop with the questions. He can be quite astute, you know. She next spoke as she leaned on the desk again. I mean, he reads the text Shizune or I give with fervor. Sometimes he makes a cage bunshin just to help him take notes or talk things over. Shizune certainly found teach a CL of them rather entertaining as they seemed to ask out of the box questions or ask things that many medics don't ask her right off. Kakashi and the Anbu in the room looked at their Hokage in shock. From what they either knew or had experienced with Naruto, he wasn't studious in the slightest. In fact, Naruto seemed to be the furthest thing from a studious individual. Kakashi thought back to the times he saw Naruto struggle with the concept of chakra before traveling to Nami no Kuni. Now here was their Hokage speaking rather highly of him in such a manner. With a cough, Kakashi asked, pardon me Tsunade-sama, but it kind of sounds like you trained him. With that, Tsunade turned her attention back to the masked Jonin. I did train him. The answer greatly surprised the masked Jonin. That was not something he had ever anticipated happening between the two blondes. Well, I see, said the surprised Jonin. What could he say to that? How does one take that their genin had been taken under the wing of a Sannin, especially one that has a skill set that you don't expect them to take to? If you will excuse me Tsunade-sama, I need to inform the rest of my team about Naruto's absence. Tsunade nodded. Very well. Oh, and when Naruto returns I will give you a schedule that will detail Naruto's time studying under you and myself. Just because he is my second apprentice does not mean I will remove him from Team 7. Kakashi nodded at what he was told by his Hokage and left the office. Kakashi had made his way to the spot that many of the older shinobi hung out. It was a well-kept bar that had a modern design to it called the Forest's Peak. In back of the building but close to the bar is a rather large booth where Kakashi found most of his friends, the other Jonin Sensei, meeting up and trying to relax from the recent conflict. In a bit of a daze, Kakashi joined them at their table. The Jonin took in Kakashi's dazed expression and got rather curious. The one to voice it was Guy, but not in his usual boisterous manner. Greetings Kakashi. What's got you so shocked? Kakashi said nothing until he took a pull from a sake dish. Once he set it down, I just found out that Naruto is apprenticed to Tsunade-sama. That got everyone's attention. What? Exclaimed Kurenai, shocked as much as everyone else at the declaration. It was then another joined the table. Yugao was wearing her Anbu body suit with her sword on her, though she placed it at the side of the table as she took her seat. She took in everyone's shocked expressions and asked, what has all of you looking so shocked? Asuma spoke up. One of your boyfriend's genin, Naruto, is apparently an apprentice to Tsunade-sama. Now Yugao looked as shocked as the rest. When did this happen? Asked Yugao. Kakashi shrugged his shoulders. Don't know, but apparently it's been going on for a while. It was then that the other Jonin sensei gained an understanding look. Well, that certainly explains the interest in Iryo ninjutsu, commented Kurenai. And what he nearly did to Neji, continued Guy. Though if he had to be honest, he was glad for the experience. It opened Neji up to learn that fate doesn't control a person's outcome in life. Kakashi looked around the table looking sheepish. Yeah, I've been meaning to ask, what happened in Naruto's matches? This gained him an annoyed look from Kurenai and Asuma, but a curious one from Guy, who figured he would have heard about it by now. Well, if you weren't late you would know, spoke Kurenai. Yeah, sorry about that, but I ran into Yugao and wanted to make sure she was doing okay, spoke Kakashi as he took the perplexed hand under the table. Oh, replied Kurenai, embered at her recent words. It's fine, Kurenai, spoke Yugao, but I'm curious to know how his matches went too, as well as the other matches from the exam. At that, Asuma looked downright embered. Not keen on reliving his failure to train Shikamaru like a proper sensei for the exams, while Kurenai was both pleased and upset that Shino didn't get to fight in official match but still defeated his opponent when all hell broke loose. As he held Yugao's hand, Kakashi remembered the oath he made the morning after the funeral, though he was still listening to the tale his colleagues were telling him. Movie reference. Yugao had spent the night at Kakashi's after the funeral, holding him close as they slept. The morning after, Kakashi had awoken first. He gained a serious look in his eye as he looked towards the sleeping Yugao. His absence had led to the death of another colleague and one that hurt someone close to him. While his duties had taken him elsewhere, there were still those he could have protected in the invasion. Standing from his bed, he did so softly to not wake Yugao. He made his way to his chest of drawers. Hidden in one of the unused drawers, he pulled out a box of a deep mahogany with elaborated wood-burned patterns in it. He unlocked the box, opening it to reveal the chakra saber he hadn't wielded since he was a child. He drew the weapon and made an oath. I swear I will protect my comrades just as you did, father. With that said, he placed the saber with his equipment and returned to bed alongside Yugao. In the morning, she had seen the new addition to his equipment and held him close. She knew the negative memories the weapon once held for Kakashi, so she was determined to stand by him as she had done in Anbu and he was doing for her now. Kakashi had used his free hand to feel the chakra saber that sat horizontally at the small of his back above his utility pouch. Yugao noticed this and gave his hand a squeeze, letting him know he didn't need to let the past rule him any longer. He returned the gesture, showing he would be there for her no matter what. It had been 2 days since Tsunade sent her first message to Jiraiya, and so far, he had yet to acknowledge the messages. She had learned, when sending messages to Naruto about what was going on, that Jiraiya was ignoring the messages she was sending under the guise of trying to throw him off the trail. When she had read that, she felt an oncoming headache from the absolutely idiotic reasoning. The toads were unable to convince him either, showing off that stubbornness that both kept him, her and Orochimaru alive, as well as making it difficult to work with him at times. Seeing as no progress was being made from sending him recall notices or Naruto telling the pervert she was already Hokage, Tsunade needed to implement other means. She may have to meet up with Jiraiya and drag him back to Konoha, since he clearly wasn't listening to his Hokage. Once again, the elders were meeting with Tsunade in her office, her desk noticeable void of the paperwork that normally plagued her predecessor. Hello, Tsunade Dono, greeted Homura and Kaharu. Good afternoon, Tsunade Dono, greeted Danzo. The woman's strong attitude in dealing with foreign diplomats and refusal to back down in the face of their vague threats had done a lot in gaining the older man's support. May I inquire to the reason you have called us here? Asked the Warhawk. Yes. As you are aware, Jiraiya is out on a currently pointless mission with Naruto Uzumaki to locate myself to become the Godime Hokage. She received nods of acknowledgement. I have been sending messages to Jiraiya through my summons, using Naruto as a beacon for them to locate the duo, to reach out him to recall him back to the village. Since the first message, he has ignored my words and continued with his journey. This was more of a sour point for the Warhawk than the other two. Once it was learned that Naruto was an up-and-coming Iryo nin, he was happy to hear the boy develop a skill set that would make him into a one-man field hospital. While he would prefer something more combat-oriented, anything was better than a shinobi only versed in the major fields of the shinobi arts. Every other Jinchuriki in the other nations, aside from the Gara boy, have demonstrated skills beyond the basic 3 areas of being a shinobi. Having the boy as an Iryo nin would boost the recovery of their shinobi during war effort. There was a clear example of this during the recovery of Konoha after the invasion of Suna and Oto. Now with the boy's absence, the efficiency of many of the field hospitals that boy had stationed his buncheons had fallen to a degree the Warhawk found unacceptable. They needed him back to lighten the load of many of their recovery facilities. It was already a good thing the boy was learning under Tsunade, now they need to bring him back to make him into 10 walking field hospitals. Tsunade continued her discussion with the elders. I have learned from my second apprentice, Naruto, who I have had reporting to me since the second message was sent, that the reason Jiraiya is ignoring my messages is because he claims I am trying to throw him off my trail. Since his failure to heed my second message, I have been having Naruto send me updates as to their location and direction, as well as if he knows what Jiraiya is doing while searching for leads. So far, he only reports the smell of booze on him as well as him eyeing women that catch his attention. Granted, this does not mean that he is not meeting with any contact he may have, but again this mission is pointless. At this the elders show their displeasure on their faces. Jiraiya had immense skill in being a spy master for Konoha. When he reported his findings, Konoha enjoyed the fruits of his labors as they were able to prepare for incoming threats or lead great counter-attacks during prolonged battles. However, that was only if he reported in. Jiraiya had a bad tendency to get sidetracked or do things his way as he believed he knew what the best course of action was, no matter the evidence to the contrary. That being said, continued the Godime, considering how he acts, I may have to meet him in person in order to get him to call of this search. They didn't like it, but the elders would have to agree. If the man was not going to heed the words of his Hokage as he believes she is not his Hokage, as news is yet to confirm it for him, it would not be wise to have him listed as a missing nin simply for being ill-informed, even if he chose to ignore the information. Though a good shinobi always verified any information so as to not be led astray. How do you plan to go about meeting with him? Asked Danzo, curious as to the operation his Hokage had planned to bring back the 2 shinobi. Given the boy's closeness to the Hokage, the one to worry about is Jiraiya. Tsunade kept her hands laced before her face as she continued to lay out the mission details surrounding her setting out to tell Jiraiya that there was no need for him to continue his search. She also thought of the punishment she would give the Gama Sanin when they caught up with him for ignoring her letters and orders. When we are prepared to leave, I will have Naruto give me their approximate location. With that I will move towards a city that Jiraiya would not find odd for heading there. This way we will not be wasting time when it comes to searching for where they will be headed to, instead using his search from me to lure him to us, clarified the Godime. I will even have Naruto send me messages to confirm that he and Jiraiya are headed toward my location to ensure things would be going as planned. Hearing this detail, Koharu found that the idea of getting information from Naruto to determine their route was smart. It would save time to catch the Gama Sanin's attention and ensure a swift resolution to what became an unnecessary retrieval mission. Who will accompany you for this? Asked the older woman. Tsunade's posture or demeanor did not change as she answered. Shizune and Taunton will accompany me in the open, keeping to the appearance that we are traveling around Hai no Kuni. In the shadows will be the current contingent of my Anbu guard. Danzo agreed to this. Utilizing the tactic of baiting your foe by showing them what they want to see is a great tactic, especially with a response team in the shadows nearby. He was also glad to see that she did not forego her Anbu guard like her predecessor nearly did during the Chunin exams. After all, leaving one's cage unguarded, no matter how strong they are, is a poor lapse in judgment no shinobi could ever live down. The last thing that needed to be settled was how Tsunade would keep up with her duties as Hokage while she was indisposed. The one to ask about this was Koharu. How long do you foresee being away, and what of your duties while you are away? Tsunade had a solution to this detail as well. After all, she grew up living with two Hokage, was tutored by another and knew one of the best who was unparalleled at handling his duties despite fretting over his pregnant wife. Since she could not simply teleport between her location and her office and back to where she came from, Tsunade had thought of another solution that used the idea of teleporting to and from her office. The timetable for this mission is set so that this retrieval will take at most 2 weeks with more time allocated based on Jiraiya's speed of travel to my location when he determines my location. From what Naruto has sent back, we know that currently they are walking to each town Jiraiya has been leading them towards, spoke the Godime. If this pace is maintained, more time will be necessary until we can make our way back at much more appropriate pace, she finished. Koharu did have a plausible question. Hokage Dono, can you not simply summon them back? Tsunade turned her gaze towards the older woman. While it is true Naruto can be reversed summoned by the slugs, Jiraiya cannot as he is not a signer of the slug contract, she spoke. At that the elders nodded in understanding. Tsunade then continued her explanation to placate the worries of the elders. As for my duties, I shall let the various systems we have do their job while I have one of my summons retrieve that which is left on my desk and bring it to me so that a backlog is not made. When I am done with the documents, I can have them sent back in the same manner so they can be processed. While traveling I can leave any documents with my summons so that they are accessible to very few people while also being secure so there is no chance of losing them. In the event there is a breach we will know where to start an investigation. Once again, elders can agree to this solution. Danzo himself being very impressed by the woman's forethought and planning. Under his second term as Hokage, Hiruzen struggled to manage the bureaucracy of the position. Whether it was his age or some other factor the Warhawk didn't know. But due to his failings, his rival was behind in his paperwork and the management of the village that it was a miracle the village held itself together. The next to speak was Elder Homura. So when will you be leaving Hokage Dono? I shall send a message to Naruto to tell us of his location so we can determine the town we are to head towards so we can draw Jiraiya to us. To that end we shall leave in 2 days at the latest once we know where we are headed, replied Tsunade. Once again elders nodded at Tsunade's words. They agreed to her operation as not only was their spy master wasting his time but also the time of one of their up-and-coming medics. Now that the three were aware of what was going to happen, the meeting was dismissed. As soon as the elders left her office, Tsunade summoned Kazu once more to carry a message to Naruto for what she needed him to do for her so she could bring him and the pervert back to Konoha. She would receive a message from Naruto before the day is done saying that he and Jiraiya were located almost a week's travel from Tanzaku-gai. Tsunade should have known they would be near that town. Jiraiya was attempting to use her habit of incessant gambling to track her down. A strategy that would work if she hadn't been weaning herself of her vices to a more manageable level. With her destination set, Tsunade ordered Shizune and her Anbu to prepare as they leave the next day. Hidden within an underground facility located in Hai-no-Kuni, the hubby Sanin Orochimaru was writhing in pain. Sweat rolled down his features as his arms felt as if lave replaced his blood and fire ants bit at his skin. He was now dressed in a simple black kimono while his arms were bandaged to hide the hideous gray they have become. He was sitting up in a rather comfortable king-size bed with a cushioned headrest that had the head of a snake looking towards the door. At his bedside is his assistant Kabuto, who was carrying a silver medicine tray that mostly carried painkillers. Kabuto is a fair-skinned man with onyx eyes and ash-gray hair that he has in a low ponytail while his bangs were parted down the center. He wore large, black, circular glees. Normally he wears a sleeveless dark purple shirt with a high collar and matching purple pants that stop midway down his shins. Under his purple shirt is a short-sleeved, white shirt. Around his waist was a thick white sash. He also wore blue shinobi sandals. Whenever he was out on missions for his master, he would have a shuriken holster on his right leg while having a utility pouch on the left side of his, and he would wear forearm-length purple gloves that have a thick metal plate on the back of the hand, while an Odo Hitai 8 would be tied around his forehead. "I'm sorry, Orochimaru-sama," apologized the Glees-wearing subordinate who was dressed in a full-body medical gown. "But it seems that whatever the former Sandaime Hokage had done to you is beyond my expertise to cure." Orochimaru growled, though whether from agony or the poor news was undeterminable. "If only that fool Mizuki had done his job and brought me the sacred scroll of sealing. I would have had the notes of the Nadaime and made my Edo Tensei stronger. Instead, I was forced to retread the steps of another because he lost to a boy that had no proper training to do anything," growled the hubby Sanin. Kabuto wasn't as sure of that. From his infiltration of the records of Konoha, all he could determine was that the Chunin had lost, but not how. For all they knew, the boy could have tapped into the power of his tenant and overwhelmed the former Chunin. Having the most leniency as one of Orochimaru's subordinates, Kabuto spoke his mind. "I'm not so sure, Orochimaru-sama. We have no idea what happened, and the Chunin that brought in Naruto and the scroll refused to comment to anyone about the incident." While the bespectacled subordinate spoke with no ill will towards his master, Orochimaru felt as if he was being talked down to by someone who was clearly beneath him. If he were not so weak, he would demonstrate to his subordinate why his will and desires are not seconded guessed, nor why no subordinate should speak out of turn, no matter their status. "Never mind that," spat the in pain hubby Sanin. "If I am going to have my arms healed, I will need Tsunade. She is probably the only person who can heal my arms now." Kabuto felt a stab to his pride as a medic, as he was compared to the legendary medic. Whatever was afflicting his master was not physical in nature, that much he could tell, as all the functions of the arm were fully intact. However, it was if there was a connection missing that science could not explain. Kabuto was broken from his recollections on his notes toward the ailment that affected his master when Orochimaru spoke again. "Locate Tsunade and summon Gurren. She will accompany us in the event Tsunade becomes non-compliant," Orochimaru ordered his second-in-command. Kabuto set down the tray of painkillers on Orochimaru's plain nightstand. He gave a curt bow and spoke, "Right away, Orochimaru-sama." With that, Kabuto left his master, who writhed in pain until he could be relieved of it by his former teammate. It was the end to another day, and Naruto found himself in a weird place. He was sure he fell asleep in the sleeping bag he packed for this journey, and that it was, night. Around him was an open field made up of ankle-high, soft, green GR, with the sun overhead appearing to be in the position of mid-morning. All around him were several rivers that ran from a place off in the distance to all throughout the field. The water was either blue or orange, with the orange rivers being larger than the blue rivers. Off in the distance, the same place where many of the rivers seemed to lead, was an incredibly large forest. The trees were so large that they would overshadow the Hokage monument. Seeing as there was nothing around him other than the gorgeous scenery, Naruto made his way toward the large forest. After what felt like hours, Naruto finally arrived at the edge of the forest. He was surprised to see that the trees that divided the plains from the forest took on the formation of a wavy fence, with the trees interwoven with the ground as if to withstand great gales, floods, or great impacts. Directly in front of him were two trees that reminded him of what he usually sees around Konoha, but were just as tall as the ones behind them. The branches of these trees seemed interwoven together as if to hold onto one another. Halfway up the trees was a piece of the interwoven branches that had a paper tag over it with the kanji of seal on it. Due to the light from the sun above, he could see moderately well beyond the trees, but the canopy prevented it from being illuminated as it was where he stood. Suddenly, a gigantic orange blur slammed into the tree-like gate, rocking wherever he was as the air pressure sent Naruto flying backwards and tumbling on the GR. Naruto landed in a seated position facing the gate. His eyes widened in surprise. Before him, behind the gate, was the Kyuubi. The great beast towered over him to the point where one claw was bigger than him. The great beast seemed to be much larger than Shukaku, maybe double the Tanuki's size, though he was still not bigger than Katsuyu. The Kyubi has blazing orange fur with ears more like those of a rabbit than a fox. It had black fur that surrounded its blood red, slitted eyes that traveled up into its ears as well as around its muzzle, giving the appearance of having lips. It has a sapien-like upper body with front paws that have 5 finger-like digits including thumbs, with each digit having razor-sharp claws. As Naruto calmed his racing heart, he noticed the Kyubi seemed to be smiling down at him, showing off its teeth, as if entertained by his stunned visage. Naruto immediately shot to his feet, pointed at the orange fox and shouted, "Oi! What the heck was that for, you crazy kitsune?" The Kyubi continued to smile down at the blonde as it responded nonchalantly but with a booming voice, "Oh, nothing really. I just wanted to see your startled face," the great beast replied while laughing at the blonde. Naruto's anger grew considerably. "Oi, that's not funny, you." The Kyubi's demeanor didn't change as it responded, "For a prankster you seem to not be able to take a joke." Naruto's anger grew even more. What he didn't notice while his anger grew was that some orange fluid began to make its way down the blue rivers. After some time, Naruto managed to calm down. Looking at the Kyubi in the eyes with a semi-angry look in his own eyes as he asked, "So is this the seal?" "Yes," replied the Kyubi. "But this place we are in," it said, gesturing to the world around them with its tails, "is your mental representation of the seal. Though it is better than the sewer it once was," explained the great beast. Naruto looked confused. "This used to be a sewer?" he asked as his head tilted to the side. "Yes. When I was sealed in here by your Yondaime it was blank, as this place is a representation of how you feel about your life subconsciously. If you feel great it looks great, and if you feel bad this place looks horrible. Over time this place became a sewer due to how you felt about yourself and the life you were living. However, as soon as you began hanging out with those women, things in here began to change to what you see now," explained the kitsune. Naruto was happy to know about this place around him and that it became better than a sewer. But then something struck him. "How do you know about Su-chan, or Shizune-sensei? Can you see through me to the outside?" Naruto asked in a panic. Once again, the Kyubi enjoyed the panic of his blonde jailer. "No," it said casually. Naruto let out a sigh of relief. "But I can see your memories," it continued. Once again Naruto panicked. "What? When you sleep your mental barriers fall, allowing me to see everything that pays through your mind. While the seal prevents me from influencing you, it does not stop me from viewing everything I want to see. I can also do this while you are awake if you become tunnel-visioned on a task and leave no room in your subconscious to block me out," it replied with a sharp grin. Naruto felt a shiver crawl up his spine as he said what he felt about that. "That's just wrong. It is thanks to my power that I can do that," explained the Kyubi as it looked as if it were reminiscing. "Though if your two-san would have split my chakra like he intended, I would be unable to do this and you would be unable to do what you call Iryo ninjutsu." That explanation left Naruto stunned. Not noticing Naruto's explanation, the Kyubi continued. "Luckily, he didn't split my chakra as he intended due to my previous jailer reminding him that without my other half your body would be forced to endure the large influx of whichever half was sealed into you, denying you the ability to mold both my chakra and yours properly, as you would forever be out of balance. Another issue would be that if you received my physical half, you would lose a portion of your spiritual energy, as I would need to siphon some to keep myself alive, as I am an entity of chakra." As I said, he seemed to forget chakra as both spiritual and physical energies, and if he split me, you could never be a medic. Again, thank your Ka-san, as she reminded him the Hake no Fuin Shiki he used could contain me as it had done before. Naruto was left silent, unable to respond to what he was just told. "So then how did he die?" asked Naruto. The Kyubi seemed to hesitate in its response. The same way as your Ka-san, intercepting a claw meant to slay you, he told the boy. Naruto was left silent. After a while the Kyuubi spoke, "Hey now, I don't need my source of entertainment freezing up like this." This immediately got Naruto's attention. "What are you talking about?" Kyuubi shrugged its tails. "While you sleep, I can see your memories and some of them are quite entertaining. Such as your fight with the red head that held my Otudo." "Hey, don't look at stuff like that," shouted Naruto. "Be thankful I did Gaki. For if I didn't you would not have received my help," replied the Kyuubi. Naruto looked indignant at that. "Hey, I don't need your help. In case you weren't paying attention, I was winning that fight. And if not for me you wouldn't have crushed Shukaku by summoning that Miv slug that crushed my uppity Otudo," shouted the Kyuubi. "What?" asked a confused Naruto. "You heard me. When you were about to summon your companion, I sent some of my own chakra into your system allowing you to summon her at her true size." Naruto stood in silence once again before bowing at the waist. "Thank you," he told the Kyuubi. This was one of those lessons of etiquette from Tsunade and Shizune. If someone helps you, even if you didn't need it, you should still thank them for their stance. The Kyuubi for his part was stunned. Not once since being sealed away was he ever treated with any form of courtesy. "Tisk. Think nothing of it Gaki," spoke the kitsune as it waved off Naruto's gratitude. "I just did it so my jailer would not lose to my weak Otudo," explained the Kyuubi. Though he would admit that the memory of watching Shukaku getting crushed by giant slugs still caused him to cry from laughter from time to time. He just wishes he could see the look on Shukaku's face right before he was going to be crushed. "Well, I was taught that you should at least be decent with everyone you meet until they give you a reason not to be," spoke Naruto. "And even though you pulled a really mean move when you startled me and killed my parents, you at least helped me out. So even though you are you still should get thanks for helping me." The Kyuubi was left silent, unsure of what to say next. It didn't feel comfortable yet about telling the blonde all the circumstances that led up to the loss of his parents and the deaths of so many, but he would at least follow the path of understanding his own Tsunade preached about. After all, the sins of the father are not the sins of the son. "So now what?" asked Naruto. The Kyuubi said nothing as it was also unsure of what to do now. "Why don't you go rest in the field behind you? After all, when you are here your mind is awake. It would do well for my entertainer to be fully coherent so I can enjoy every new moment I wish to see," spoke the Kyuubi. While the idea of being seen as an entertainer irked the blonde to no end, if what the Kyuubi was saying was true he should get some rest. Before he left, however, Naruto asked a question. "So how do I get back here?" The Kyuubi looked at the boy for only a moment. "Why? Well, this place is nice. I feel really relaxed here," explained the blonde fondly. "Keep your mind clear as if you were meditating. Keep all distractions to a minimum and truly feel at peace. Then you will find yourself here again. The more you do it, the easier it will be to reach this place," explained the kitsune. Naruto nodded appreciatively as he thanked the great beast before he walked back into the Sea of Gr. The Kyuubi for its part was judging the boy as he left. "Show me what kind of person you are, Naruto Uzumaki," thought the Kyuubi before it went back to replaying the memories that Naruto had when learning the Rasengan, taking great pleasure at how the boy left the Gamma Sanin speechless and stunned.